Is May 29th, 2024, and in today's video, we'll be talking about the death of the legendary Bill Walton. Bill Walton has reportedly passed away from cancer at the age of 71. And in this video, we'll talk about how his death is connected to the Boston Celtics, who just so happened to advance to the NBA Finals on May 27th over the Indiana Pacers, the same date that Bill Walton passed away. Now, the last video on this channel, which I just streamed yesterday, talks about the Morgan riddle with the death of golfer Grayson Murray and the WWE. Well, one thing I did not note in that video is that perhaps the greatest wrestler of all time, certainly the winningest, 16-time champion, Ric Flair, his middle name is Morgan. Now, there's one time I've mentioned Ric Flair on this channel. That was back in the summer of 2022, when Bill Russell died on the same date as Ric Flair's last match. And you can see the video linked below in the description that I made on this from that time. Now, Bill Russell passed away on July 31st of 2022. And July 31st happens to be the same date as the birthday of a woman named Morgan Riddle, an American influencer who was the boyfriend of Taylor Fritz, the #1 ranked tennis player in the United States. So there's a lot more to this, of course. The last name Russell, or first name in some cases, means redhead. And when you look at Ric Flair, you realize that a lot of his matches ended with him having red hair due to him juicing during the match. But another famous Bill with red hair is Bill Walton, who has now passed away 666 days after the death of Bill Russell. Now, you'll notice here that Bill Russell died on the 212th day of the year. And that's the number I led my decode off with, because he was also born on February 12th, or 212. Well, if you go backwards 212 days before Bill Walton's death, you get to October 28th of 2023. And this is the date that Matthew Perry died. Now, why is this relevant? Well, after Matthew Perry died, I made this post talking about the connection between Matthew Perry and the Waltons, particularly Bill Walton. And this was the first and only time I ever mentioned Bill Walton on this blog or the channel. And in the links in the description below, you can find a link that takes you right to this. And the reason I made this connection is because the Friends Fountain, famous from the opening of the series, was removed from Hollywood just before Matthew Perry died. And this same fountain was used in an episode of The Waltons, another sitcom from the 70s. And the reason I made this connection is because a fountain was destroyed in Massachusetts less than a day after Perry died. And Matthew Perry was born in Massachusetts, which is, of course, where the Boston Celtics play their home games. So it's no big surprise now that, 7 months later, I'm here decoding Bill's departure from our planet. So we'll explore how his death is connected to Matthew Perry's, but in order to bring this all full circle, we will also need to understand how this syncs up with the numerology of last month's Great American Eclipse and the numerology of the moon. Bill Walton's given names were William and Theodore. William and Theodore are the real first names of movie characters Bill and Ted, who first appeared alongside George Carlin back in 1989. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and George Carlin died at age 71, just like Bill Walton. So this may seem like an obscure connection, but there are some remarkable and undeniable synchronicities between Walton, Carlin, and actor Alex Winter, who played Bill in Bill and Ted. Now, Bill and Ted is a movie about time travel. And when we talk about numbers and time travel, the one that comes up most frequently is 88. This traces back to the film Back to the Future, where time travel is accomplished at 88 miles per hour. In this film, we get a glimpse into the future where we see that the Chicago Cubs win the World Series. The city of Chicago sits on the 88th meridian. And when Bill Russell died, he died at age 88. And Bill Russell, the winningest player in NBA history, 11 championships, died on the same date that Ric Flair had his last match. And he's got the most championships, 16. Well, 16 is the sum of 8 plus 8. And Ric Flair, 88 in the alphabetic order. Also, the name Russell is 106, which represents the number 16. And when you look at the date Bill Walton died, it was a span of 106 days after the birthday of Russell. So the number 88 is one I mentioned when I talked about Matthew Perry and the Waltons back in October. If you scroll down, you'll see I started talking about Chicago, Illinois, and the number 88, as this was all synced up to the death of Dick Butkus, who has a number of 88 connections. Matthew Langford Perry and Massachusetts, both summing to 808, like where he died, Pacific Palisades in California. Luke Walton, born on the 88th day of the year. The Waltons was on TV for 8 years and 8 months. And as we'll see later on in this video, Bill Walton was born exactly 808 weeks after comedian George Carlin. Now, the number 88 stands out for Bill Walton for a couple of other reasons. Walton played his college basketball at UCLA, and he was really one of the greatest college basketball players of all time. And during his time at UCLA, the school won 88 straight games, which was a record. Bill Walton's NBA career even ended in the year 88. We'll look at actor Alexander Winter, whose name sums to 74 and 88. Bill Walton was drafted in 74. On the date of the eclipse last month, you'll see the number 088 in Bill Walton's age. He was exactly 688 lunar phases when George Carlin died. So we'll dig more into this part of the riddle, but before we do, I want to look more at this eclipse code. So notice how Bill Russell has the same gematria as Bill Walton's full and common names. One of those numbers they share is 60. 60 is the reverse reduction value of 666. And again, these two legendary Celtics players dead exactly 666 days apart. When Bill and Ted was released in '89, Bill Russell was 660 months and 6 days old. In fact, he also died 666 sidereal months after the Waltons. And the Waltons was the sitcom from the 70s that premiered just as Bill Walton was graduating college. So he was at UCLA when that show premiered. Now, a sidereal month is something to take into account for this video, as it's one of two significant cycles of the moon, along with the synodic period. Both of these are a little bit shorter than the standard month, but accurately measure the orbit of the moon. The name Bill Russell even has the same gematria as 666 and triple sixes. 666 also connects to the Brotherhood of Death, which sums to 666 when you add all four base methods of gematria. And if you're new to this channel, Gematria is the number lettering system that provides the numeric underbelly of the English language. And this ordinal method can branch off into the base 4 methods. As always, we'll look at the extended forms of Gematria as well. The standard method, which most closely mirrors ancient Hebrew and Greek Gematria. And also the Latin cipher. Of course, Latin, the language that English primarily evolved from. In Latin, the Brotherhood of Death has matching 724 Gematria with Number of the Beast. And as I always link, there's this PowerPoint that shows all the connections between the moon, the sun, and 666, connecting to the Eclipse code. Bill Walton's full name has matching Gematria with 1331, which is the ultimate eclipse number. I'll link this post below this video after I'm done as well. So the Skull and Bones code with Yale University is something that hopefully everybody understands that watches my videos regularly. As Yale University, recently turning 322 years old. And Yale University and Skull and Bones is all synced up with the Great American Eclipses. Here we see the school, which is home to Order 322, turned 322 years old in 2023. So May 27th was a big Skull and Bones date. Notice how Skull and Bones with the ampersand sums to 527, like how May 27th is written. This year, May 27th had numerology of 22 and 76. Skull and Bones equals 202 and 76 in reverse. Bill Walton, 202, with reverse caps. Reverse caps, this is a cipher that maintains the alphabetic order, but adds 26 for any capital letter used. This cipher very relevant for names. And when it comes to the number 22, this is of course connected to basketball, which sums to 22. Bill also died 5 months and 9 days before his next birthday. And whether or not you use the ampersand, Skull and Bones sums to 59 in multiple ciphers. However, it's the skull and crossbones that provides the symbol for the secret society. Skull and crossbones sums to 1105 and 223. Bill Walton celebrated his last birthday on 1105 of 2023. So here we see the skull and crossbones are emblematic of the two eclipses that create a cross over the United States. Well, in Latin Gematria, skull and crossbones sums to 885. In standard, both eclipse the sun and plane of the sun each sum to 885. 1 day before he died, Bill Walton turned exactly 885 lunar phases old. He played his college basketball for the UCLA Bruins, which also sums to 885. However, in the alphabetic order, you'll see that UCLA Bruins has matching 120 Gematria with the name Bill Walton, also 120 in ordinal. This points us to the eclipse code because the word eclipse also equals 120. And if you measure from the eclipse that went over the United States last month, Bill Walton died a span of exactly 1 month and 20 days later. This eclipse, by the way, passed over the city of Indianapolis, which saw the path of totality. And the same day Bill Walton died, the Celtics defeated the Indiana Pacers. And they did so in Indianapolis. Skull and Crossbones has matching 204 Gematria with Matthew Perry. And Bill Walton died 204 days after his birthday, or 205 with the end date. Well, 205 connects to Yale University. On the date of that eclipse, Bill Walton was 883 lunar phases. In the next part of this video, we'll talk about how this connects to George Carlin, who played Rufus in the film Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, both dead at 71. George Carlin Rufus equals 883. Bill Walton died 18,883 days after the premiere of The Waltons in 1972. And he died 12,883 days after the release of Bill and Ted. So again, more on that in a little bit. The character Bill in that film is played by Alex Winter, whose numerology completely lines up with Bill Walton to an absurd extent. When Bill and Ted came out, Alex Winter was exactly the 202nd prime number of weeks old, 1231. 202 is the gematria of both total solar eclipse and skull and bones. 22 days before the eclipse, Alexander Winter turned 704 months old. The name Alexander Winter equals 74. Total solar eclipse equals 704 and 74 in Latin. And once again, Bill Walton was drafted in the year 74. When the TV series The Waltons debuted, it was on the 14th of September, or 14/9. In ordinals, skull and bones equals 149, and also 76 in reduction. Well, earlier I pointed out how Bill died on a date with 76 numerology. Alex Winter is currently 706 months old. He was 7 years and 60 days old when The Waltons premiered, and 322 days after his birthday when the show ended. Well, not only is 322 found in the gematria of the name Winter, but of course, this is the number that most people associate with skull and bones. So let's look at how the moon brings this all together, particularly through comedian George Carlin, who has got to be the greatest comedian of all time in my book. A significant number to the moon is 57. The word moon equals 57, and this celestial body has a range of 57 degrees around the plane of the sun. In the alphabetic order, both George and Carlin sum to 57. George Carlin also equals 210, like moon. Bill Walton died exactly 197 lunar phases after George Carlin. In satanic gematria, the word moon is 197. Bill Walton played his college basketball in Los Angeles, California, which also sums to 197. When Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was released, George Carlin was 281 days after his birthday. William Theodore Walton III equals 281 ordinal and 128 reduction. These digits also connect to Matthew Perry, who died on 28/10 or 1028, the same digits we see here. On top of this numerology, the film also came out on the 17th of February, or 17/2. Bill Walton and Matthew Perry both have gematria of 172. Walton passed away 6 months and 22 days after his birthday. George Carlin died on 6/22, June 22nd, which is also written 22/6. The name George Carlin has matching 226 Gematria with sacrifice. So let's take another look at Bill from Bill and Ted. And again, the reason we're doing this is because Bill Walton, his given names were Bill and Ted. George Carlin passed away 7 months and 17 days after Bill Walton's birthday. 7/17, or July 17th, is the birthday of actor Alex Winter. Winter is currently 58 years old, and Alex Winter equals 58. Bill and Ted came out 215 days after his birthday, and when Bill Walton died, now he's 21,500 days old. But perhaps the most significant alignment here is this. When Bill Walton died, Alex Winter was exactly 728 lunar phases old. 728 is the gematria value that these two men share. The character Ted Theodore Logan equals 728, just like William Theodore Walton III. Mind-numbing synchronicities, where you would least expect them. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure ran for exactly 90 minutes. In the alphabetic order, the moon equals 90. And look where Bill Walton died. San Diego, California, which equals 90 and 108. 108 is another number that's very significant to the geometry of the Earth, Moon, and Sun system. Full moon and geometry, even both with double gematria of 108. Well, not only was Alex Winter born on a date with 108 numerology, but Bill and Ted came out on a date with 108 numerology. This isn't the only Bill and Ted movie, however. This is actually part of a trilogy, and after 29 years with no Bill and Ted movies, we got the third one in the year 2020. This film came out exactly 3 years and 9 months before the death of Bill Walton, whose name equals 39. His death was also 39 weeks after the anniversary of its release. And his death is connected to George. George equals 39. In fact, the other Bill, Bill Russell, was exactly 39 months older than George Carlin. The number 39, however, is significant to the moon. When you write out the number 39, you get gematria of 283 and 1321. Well, this 1321 is the 216th prime number. The moon equals 283 and is 2,160 miles across at its equator. And look how old Alex Winter was when Bill and Ted came out. He was exactly 283 months old and a span of 216 days after his birthday. With capital letters, the city of Los Angeles equals 216. I've done a lot of work showing how LA is very connected to the moon. But think about these digits, 216. Whether you write out Bill Walton's common or full names, you get 162. And the basketball legend died 162 days before his next birthday in the city of San Diego, California, which equals 162. Bill Walton lived to be 162 days older than George Carlin. George Carlin's full name, for the record, has the same digits, 126. Carlin sums to 42 and 342. The name George is also 342. Alex Winter was 42 years, 342 days old when George Carlin died. His character's name, or actually Keanu Reeves' character's name, Ted Theodore Logan, sums to 342, just like Matthew Perry. Notice how Matthew Perry was born 6,131 days after Bill Walton. Well, when Walton died, his son Luke was 16,131 days old. This 131 is also found in the Gematria of George and Carlin. In ordinal, Alex Winter equals 131, just like ritual human sacrifice. Now, earlier we looked at lunar phases, particularly the synodic month, which measures the time between new moon to new moon. Well, on the lunar calendar, 12 synodic months is a year. So this would be about 11 days shorter than a solar year. When Alex Winter was born, Bill Walton was exactly 13 lunar years and 1 month old. Alex Winter, 131, the number he shares with George Carlin. When Bill died, Alex was exactly 60.666 lunar years, which ties in nicely with all of the 666 we talked about early on. But this 131 connects to Bill Walton for another reason. 131 is the 32nd prime number, and not only does the name Walton equal 32, but for the great majority of his playing career, he wore number 32. The city of Los Angeles has a primary area code of 213. And in Gematria, Los Angeles equals 213. Bill Walton died a span of 213 days after Matthew Perry, and the day after he died was exactly 213 sidereal months after George Carlin's death. And the word death equals 213. So I'd mentioned how Bill Russell has this 666 connection to Bill and Ted, right? Well, this same measurement is also 55 years and 6 days. And remarkably, 556 is the number that Bill Russell shares with William Theodore Walton III, both 556 in Gematria. All right, guys, so that'll do it for this video. Well, I skipped over the thing I put first, which is that UCLA equals 71 and 224. And now Bill Walton has died at age 71 in the year 2024. Matthew Perry, 224. The two Bills were born 224 months apart. So as always, there's going to be more. However, you guys probably know me by now. I like the deep, deep mystical riddles between the earth, the moon, and the sun. And without fail, there's always this amazing fabric of interconnectedness between characters in the media that most would never expect or think to look at. All right, everybody. So that'll do it for this one. As I said several times, almost all of my decodes are very closely linked to past videos I've made. So in the description below, you can find some of those, as well as some reference material, more about the number 666 and the moon. All right, everyone, peace, love, God bless, and we'll talk to you next time. See ya.